These are non-medical rehabs. Detox is when you're coming down off of the drug, and it's a dangerous medical time. You can, especially alcohol and like benzos, these things, you can have delusions, you can have, tremors, all kinds of bad things can happen. And, other drugs do a lot to your heart, really put a lot of strain on your heart. And they say a lot of times on their website that, medically managed, medically supervised. It's not true.
When they're bringing these people in, they're in very dire physical health. They are coming off of and trying to go cold turkey, and they don't watch these people. They put them in a room somewhere, and they don't check them as often as they're supposed to check them. We've had people die when they're coming off of heroin. One individual went out on the patio, sat in a pool chair, had a cigarette, and died while they were supposed to be monitoring him once every hour. And then after he died, they changed the logs to make it appear that they had in fact monitored him. And the way they got caught is because they wrote in the logs that they had looked in on him and he was fine, but the time that they put was after the paramedics had arrived and had declared him dead.
So on that question, who enforces it?
The department.
I think no one would be.
There doesn't seem to be enough teeth in the bills that are in fact being passed. It's hard enough to get passed, and it's hard enough to get signed by the governor, but even then, they have to bring up the enforcement part.
The problem is that you've got a department with a couple of hundred people, maybe a few dozen are directly, supposed to be monitoring almost 2,000 rehabs. It's impossible. You just can't keep a close eye on it from Sacramento. You just literally you just can't do it. Literally now you'll have a report of something bad going on and it's not investigated for a year. Everybody's gone. Half of the people, or might be brokered elsewhere. Some of them, could be dead. I mean, it's a problem. So there's 2,000 of these tract homes where people are, say, I've got 6 beds, come to my house, I'll get you sober. I was, a drug addict and now I'm sober and I can help you. And that's the quality of care here.
And they even offer classes in prison how to run a sober living home. And this is through the California Correctional Department. These classes are basically made up of former addicts learning how to talk to other addicts. When they first established it, it was meant to stay in-house. In other words, they would work in the prisons and teach other addicts how to sober up. But what happens is some people were taking that piece of paper that they got when they got out of prison, using that to establish their own sober living home.
The mortgage on this property in San Clemente, beautiful, a Talega tract home, really, really nice home, was I think about $3,500 for the mortgage. And at its height, when they were actually providing the managers, it was a family that started a business, and it was more than $30,000 a month they were getting for this house. So you see why people would rent their houses. I mean, they can make a real lot of money doing this. It would become like a campus, so you would be, these like Costa Mesa. It's a modest, not quite seaside town. And during the recession, a lot of people lost homes. They were bought up by a lot of investors, and they're renting these houses out now as sober living homes. These 7 lawsuits are going. Costa Mesa has spent $6 million thus far defending these lawsuits against people who are saying, you can't regulate us. We are protected. We're a protected class. And they're saying, look, we're not asking you to, we're just saying you can't have more than 6 beds. If you have more than 6 beds, you have to get a special permit. And the county of Orange just adopted a very similar one. But almost everybody else is just sitting back and saying, well, let's see what happens with Costa Mesa.
You come home and there's a guy living from the sober living home, living at the sober living home. You come home and there's a guy vomiting in your driveway. Your kids go play outside and they find needles, in your lawn. In the backyard, these guys get loud, at all times of the night. When your kids are looking out their window at somebody overdosing on the street outside your front window. This guy was overdosing on the street in Laguna Beach. They brought out, I'm not sure what it was, I can guess, but they brought out a needle, shoved it in his chest, and these are just people living in the house with him. They did bring him back, they aroused him back, and then they left him on the street. When the paramedics got there, nobody wanted to be around.
I've talked to a lawyer who's handled, several of these cases, and he said that if my kids had a drug problem, I've already told them the last thing you will ever do is go to one of these rehabs or sober living homes. I'll do anything else but send you to one of these because you could easily die. Your regimen for recovery may well include some sort of rehab, but you don't start with people who have just been through the program. You start with a medical professional. If this is a medical problem, you need to start with a medical assessment. You need to be physically evaluated to see what's going on and what, if you might have a heart attack or something, which is very, very common. If you're looking at it as a health condition, it should be addressed as a health condition. And of course, a non-medical detox. A non-medical detox in a lot of states, that is nonsense. It's like having a non-medical hospital. I'll have a non-medical hospital. It's crazy.
They're dying by heart attacks. They're dying by seizures. They're dying by overdoses. We know of a couple cases where people have hung themselves. There are some suicides that are going on as well. Another thing about medically assisted treatment is that even that can be perverted, because they know for the $1,000 that they're giving the addict, they're making like $40,000 by charging the insurance companies. And some people who aren't addicted enough, the brokers are telling them, well, take more drugs. Here's some, because they're going to test them. When they want to make sure that they get into the program.
They got to test dirty.
Yeah, they got to test dirty. So they're taking these people that are having a problem, they're making the problem worse by making sure that they test dirty, so they can take implants that may or may not work on their type of addiction.
It's less expensive for the insurance companies to keep the current system, which has got this like 30-day, 60-day, 90-day approach to curing addiction, which I think we can almost say universally everybody knows can't happen. You don't get cured in 30 days. An addiction, it's a lifetime situation. And the U.S. Surgeon General found that, usually I think sustained sobriety, it takes about 8 to 9 years after you first seek it to achieve sustained sobriety. So it's not a 30, 60, 90-day problem. It's being treated by our entire healthcare system as a 30, 60, 90-day problem. And it's probably less expensive for the insurers to take that approach than to say, okay, I've got to deal with you for the next 8 years.
The methodology in most of these places is basically abstinence from drugs. The Alcohol Anonymous 12-step program, that's what they're using. That's what they're calling treatment. Some people have gotten through their addictions and have found sobriety through the 12-step program. But for bad drug addiction, I really feel that it's something that needs medically assisted programs.
The research has shown that while a lot of people do find sobriety through Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step programs, 90 to 95% of people don't. And that's probably not a satisfactory treatment system.